Sir, they're your new secretary's quadruplets. That was the first thing I heard the morning I started my new job. And it wasn't me who said it. It was the poor secretary outside my boss's office, her voice trembling like she had just seen a ghost. I froze, clutching the baby bag that hung from my shoulder. My heart raced as four little pairs of eyes looked up at me, completely unaware of how much trouble they were about to cause. I didn't even have time to knock before I heard a deep voice from inside. My what? The door opened, and there he was, Mr. Callum Hart, the CEO. Tall, calm, and without asking one could tell that he is the kind of man whose presence fills a room without saying a word. His suit looked more expensive than my entire month's rent, and his eyes, sharp gray, landed straight on me, then on the chaos behind me. For small bodies. One standing on the couch, one under his desk, one drawing on a document, and the youngest holding his pen like a sword. I swallowed hard. Good morning, sir. I can explain. He blinked once, slowly, then looked around his office like he was trying to understand how his day went from business reports to this. These are your children? I nodded, embarrassment burning through my face. Yes, sir. I'm really sorry. Their babysitter canceled this morning, and I couldn't. He lifted a hand slightly. It's fine. But the way he said it didn't sound fine at all. The room was silent for a second, except for the giggles of my second boy as he tried to climb onto his chair. I moved quickly, gathering my kids like spilled marbles. I promise this won't happen again. I just couldn't miss my first day. Quadruplets, he said quietly, almost to himself. You must have your hands full. I forced a small smile. You have no idea. He looked at me for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he walked to his desk, gently picking up the pen my youngest had dropped. Let's start over, he said calmly. Mr. Callum Hart, CEO. Levi, I replied, shifting one child to my other arm. Levi Sanders, your new secretary. He nodded, the corners of his lips almost forming a smile. Almost. By noon, half the office already knew about me, the secretary with 4 kids. I could hear whispers when I passed by. Some were kind. Some weren't. I heard he brought them to work. Who does that on the first day? Poor guy. Probably desperate. I kept my head down and worked. I typed schedules, answered calls, sorted files. And every few minutes, I looked through the glass door of the small room Callum had given us, where the kids were coloring quietly under the watch of a kind intern. He didn't scold me. Didn't humiliate me. He just adjusted. Calmly. That scared me more than if he had yelled. When he spoke to me, his tone was always steady, like the storm never touched him. But there were small things. The way his eyes softened when he looked at the kids through the glass. The way he brought an extra juice box when he returned from lunch. It confused me. Made me nervous. I didn't need kindness. Not from him. Kindness was dangerous. Kindness made people like me hope for things that never lasted. A week passed. The kids had settled into a rhythm. They'd draw, nap, sometimes sneak to the hallway to wave at Callum's staff. One evening, as everyone left, I stayed behind to finish sorting his documents. The office was quiet, the city lights bleeding through the glass walls. Callum stood by the window, his sleeves rolled up, staring at the skyline. Long day? I asked softly. He turned slightly, his voice low. They all are. I smiled faintly. At least you don't have 4 mouths screaming your name at dinner time. He chuckled quietly. It was the first time I'd heard it. It made something warm stir in my chest. I can't imagine how you manage, he said. Barely, I replied. But they're all I've got. He nodded. They seem happy. I looked toward the small room where they were sleeping. They don't understand how tight things are. I try not to let them see it. For a moment, his eyes met mine, steady, searching. And then he said something that made my breath catch. You don't have to do it all alone. I didn't know what to say. So I said nothing. 2 weeks later, something changed. It started small. An envelope missing from the files. A data sheet sent to a rival company. Then a rumor. Someone had leaked a confidential deal. And somehow my name came up. When I walked into the office that morning, everyone went silent. Callum's door was closed, and his assistant wouldn't meet my eyes. My stomach turned cold. Mr. Hart is waiting for you, she said quietly. Inside, he stood by his desk, jaw tight, expression unreadable. Levi, he said, voice calm but sharp. Can I ask where you were last night after work? I blinked. At home, sir. With my kids. Why? He sighed, rubbing his temple. Someone used your login to access restricted files. They were sent to an outside address. My knees almost gave out. What? That's impossible. I didn't. I want to believe you, he said softly, cutting me off. But the system doesn't lie. My heart pounded. I swear, I didn't do anything wrong. Please, sir, Before I could finish, his phone rang. He answered, listened silently, then closed his eyes for a moment. The police are downstairs, he said quietly. They want to talk to you. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My mouth went dry. The room blurred. Callum, please, I whispered, forgetting the sir. He didn't answer. Just looked at me, with something deep in his eyes that I couldn't read. Maybe disappointment. Maybe sadness. When they took me away, my kids cried so loudly the entire floor heard them. And as I turned back to look, I saw him standing there, hands clenched at his sides, watching me go. Not as my boss, but as something else. Something he couldn't show. That night, sitting in a cold room at the station, I couldn't stop shaking. Not just from fear, but from heartbreak. Because even though I barely knew him, I had started to trust him. And now everything I had, my job, my dignity, my kids, was falling apart. The sound of the cell door closing behind me echoed through my bones. Cold metal. Heavy silence. I'd never felt smaller in my life. They said I was under investigation. Corporate theft. Data leak. Big words that didn't even sound real when they were said about me. I was just a secretary trying to survive. A single omega with 4 kids. And now I was being treated like a criminal. I sat there, staring at my hands, rough from washing bottles, typing, holding on to too much at once. I didn't cry. I couldn't. Not yet. All I could think about were my children. Were they scared? Did they cry when the officers took me? Did they eat dinner? The questions hit me over and over until I couldn't breathe. Back at the company, Callum Hart stood in his office long after everyone else had gone home. The city lights shimmered against the glass walls, but all he saw was the empty chair across his desk, the one Levi always sat in, the half-empty coffee cup, the small crayon drawing one of the kids had taped to his computer screen that morning. He reached for it, fingers brushing over the crooked hearts and shaky letters. To Mr. Bossman, thank you for not being scary. From Eli. Callum's throat tightened. They weren't supposed to be his concern. He wasn't supposed to care. But when he saw those children clinging to the police officer's legs, crying for their father, something in him cracked. He had spent years mastering silence, control, logic, things that made business sense. But this made none. Still, an hour later, when he left the building, he didn't go home. He went to the social services office. Mr. Hart, the woman said, flipping through papers. You're saying you want to take temporary guardianship of Mr. Sanders' children? Yes. His tone was calm. Steady. The same one he used in boardrooms. She raised a brow. You do realize what that means? They're quadruplets for young children under your care 24 hours. He nodded once. I'm aware. Do you have experience with children? He hesitated. No. The woman sighed. You're their employer, not a relative. I'll need approval from the department head. Then get it, he said quietly, sliding a folder across the desk. Everything you need is in there. She opened it, legal documents, background checks, financial records. Every detail spotless. For a moment, she just stared at him. You're serious. I don't leave people I care about to fight alone, he said simply. The next morning, the mansion was chaos. 4 kids. 4 different personalities. One extremely confused alpha trying to manage them. Mr. Callum, he took my cereal. I didn't. She spilled it. Where's Daddy? I want Daddy. He stood in the middle of the kitchen, hair slightly messed, shirt sleeves rolled up, trying to pour milk without spilling it. The housekeeper, an elderly woman who had worked with him for years, just shook her head. You've handled billion-dollar contracts, sir. But this might break you. Callum sighed. It already has. By noon, the dining table looked like a battlefield, crumbs, crayons, toys everywhere. But when the noise quieted for a second, and he saw all 4 sitting together, laughing over a cartoon, something softened in him. Maybe chaos wasn't always bad. Maybe it was life. Meanwhile, at the detention center, I finally got a call. When the officer said, "You have a visitor," I thought maybe it was my lawyer. But when the door opened, it was him. Callum. He didn't look like my boss anymore. His tie was gone. His eyes were tired. But his presence, still steady, still strong, filled that small room completely. Why are you here? I asked quietly. He sat down across from me, his voice low. Because you don't belong here. Something inside me broke at the sound of that. They said I sent company data, I said, trying not to cry. I didn't. I swear I didn't. He nodded. I know. You believe me? His gaze held mine. I've reviewed the logs. Someone accessed your account remotely. The timing doesn't match your keycard. You're being framed. My throat tightened. Then why? Why didn't you stop them from taking me? He leaned forward, voice soft. If I had fought in that moment, they would have called it interference. I needed time to clear your name. I stared at him. He was calm, composed. Yet underneath, I could see it: guilt, concern. Something he was trying very hard to hide. Where are my kids? I whispered. He hesitated for a second. With me. My heart stopped. With you? They're safe. Eating too much sugar. Drawing on my walls. Your youngest thinks my marble floor is a skating rink. A sound escaped me, part laugh, part sob. You shouldn't have done that. He smiled faintly. Too late. The next few days were a blur. He worked from home, balancing conference calls and chaos. The kids loved him almost instantly. Uncle Callum, they called him. They followed him everywhere, to the garden, to the kitchen, to his office. He pretended to be annoyed, but everyone could see it. The way he picked up the smallest one when she tripped. The way he tied the boys' shoelaces with careful hands. The way he listened when they talked, really listened. Each night, after they fell asleep, he would sit in silence, staring at his laptop, but his mind wasn't on work. It was on you. Levi. The way your eyes softened when you spoke about your children. The quiet strength you carried. The patience. The innocence in a world that rarely had any left. He hated that someone dared to ruin that. At the station, the investigation dragged on. They found the breach, traced it to a fake server address, but whoever set it up was careful. No direct trail. Still, Callum refused to stop. He hired his private tech team, offering bonuses, working nights. When one of his employees asked, "Sir, why are you so invested in this?" he answered simply, "Because someone good is paying for someone else's crime." A week later, I was released on bail. I didn't expect him to be waiting outside. But there he was, leaning against his car, sleeves rolled up, phone in hand. When he saw me, he slipped it into his pocket and walked forward. For a moment, I couldn't speak. "Why are you still helping me?" I finally asked. He studied me quietly. "Because I don't like watching people I care about break." My chest tightened. "You barely know me." He smiled slightly. "Maybe I know enough." When we got to his mansion, the kids ran out screaming my name. "Daddy! Daddy, look, Uncle Callum made pancakes. Daddy, he has a pool." They surrounded me, hugging my legs, tugging at my shirt, talking all at once. I almost cried right there. Callum watched quietly from the doorway. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes said everything. When the noise died down, I turned to him. "You didn't have to do this." "I wanted to," he said softly. I looked at him, at this man who had no reason to help me, yet did. "Why?" He didn't answer. He just looked away and said, "You should rest. You look exhausted." That night, when everyone was asleep, I couldn't. I stood on the balcony, staring at the stars, thinking about everything that had happened. I heard the soft click of the door behind me. "Can't sleep either?" he asked, stepping out. I smiled weakly. "You too." He stood beside me, hands in pockets. "My house hasn't been this loud in years. Feels strange. Sorry about the mess." He shook his head. "Don't apologize. It's nice. Having laughter around." For a moment, silence hung between us. Comfortable but heavy. Then he said quietly, "I'll find who did this to you. I promise." I looked at him, my voice breaking. "You don't owe me anything, Callum." He met my eyes. "Maybe not, but I want to." And before I could respond, he turned and went back inside. But that night, as I watched him disappear through the glass door, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just grateful anymore. I was falling for him. The next morning, things got worse. Someone leaked another report, this time directly under Callum's name. The board began to question his leadership. Papers called it the biggest internal scandal of the year. He didn't flinch, but I could see the exhaustion in his eyes. When I confronted him, he brushed it off. "Don't worry about me." But I did. I couldn't stop. Then, one afternoon, I overheard two men at the company whispering near the elevator. "It's all tied to that Sanders guy. They're using him to get to Hart." My heart raced. So that was it. It wasn't just about me. Someone was trying to destroy him, and I had been the perfect target. I didn't know who, but I knew one thing. I couldn't just stand there and let it happen. That night, after the kids fell asleep, I walked into his study. He looked up, surprised. Levi, I know who they're after, I said, breath trembling. It's not just me. They're after you. He frowned, standing slowly. What are you talking about? The leak. They used my ID because I'm new. Because I'm close to you. They wanted to make you look careless. He stared at me for a long second, realization dawning. Then his jaw tightened. You're right. He moved quickly, grabbing his laptop, typing fast. Within minutes, he found it, a hidden access link buried in the system, under one of the senior manager's accounts. He exhaled sharply. I've got them. But before he could say more, the lights flickered. The power went out. He looked up sharply. Stay here. Callum. Stay with the kids, Levi. He left the room, his footsteps echoing through the dark hall. My heart pounded. Something felt wrong. Minutes later, the security alarm blared. I ran toward the sound and froze. Callum was standing in the hallway, facing two men in dark suits, one of whom I recognized, the same manager he had just exposed. You shouldn't have dug, Hart, the man sneered. You could have stayed quiet. Callum's voice was low and steady. And let you ruin an innocent man's life? The man raised a hand, and before I could react, his accomplice swung a metal pipe toward Callum. I screamed his name. He ducked, blocked the hit, fought back hard, calm, precise, powerful. He wasn't just a CEO. He was a trained alpha, every movement controlled and efficient. Within minutes, security rushed in. The intruders were caught. Callum stood there, chest heaving, eyes locked on me. When it was over, I ran to him. You could have been killed. He looked at me, really looked, and said quietly, I wasn't about to lose you too. The words hit me like lightning. Before I could respond, the kids came running down the stairs, crying. He knelt, hugging all four at once, whispering, It's okay. You're safe now. And watching him there, surrounded by the children, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Home. Later that night, after the police took statements and the house was quiet again, he found me on the balcony, just like before. This time, he didn't stop a few steps away. He stood close enough that I could feel his warmth. Everything's cleared, he said softly. Your name, the case, all of it. They confessed. I exhaled, tears stinging my eyes. Thank you. For everything. He looked down at me. You don't have to thank me, Levi. You didn't deserve what happened. My voice trembled. You didn't either. Silence stretched between us, until the smallest sound broke it. Daddy. We both turned. It was Eli, rubbing his eyes sleepily. He looked at Callum, then at me, and said softly, Can he be our daddy too? My heart stopped. Callum froze, then slowly knelt down, smiling gently. Maybe one day, if your daddy says yes. I felt my throat tighten, a tear slipping down before I could stop it. Because in that moment, in his calm voice, in his soft smile, I knew I was already lost. That night, after Eli's innocent question, everything changed. The house was quiet again, but my heart wasn't. It was loud, beating fast, trembling with everything I'd tried to bury. When I lay down, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing his voice, the way he had answered my son, so calm, so sure. Maybe one day, if your daddy says yes. Those words wouldn't leave my head. The next morning, the world outside felt brighter, but inside, I was uneasy. I made breakfast, pancakes, the way the kids liked them, and tried to act normal. But Callum noticed. He always did. Levi, he said gently as he walked into the kitchen. You barely slept. I looked down at the plate I was serving. You didn't either. He smiled faintly. Touché. The kids ran in before I could say anything more, their laughter filling the room. It felt like we were a family, at least for a moment. But I knew better than to dream too much. After breakfast, he got a call from the board. They wanted him at the office to finalize reports about the security breach. I'll be back before dinner, he said, putting on his jacket. Eli tugged at his sleeve. Can we come with you, Uncle Callum? He crouched down, smiling. Not today, little man. Be good for your dad. They hugged him, all four of them, and for a moment I saw it again. How easily he fit into our chaos, how his calm matched their light. When the door closed behind him, the silence that followed hurt more than it should have. By noon, the housekeeper, Mrs. Lang, pulled me aside. You know, she said, I've worked for Mr. Hart for 12 years. I've never seen him like this. Like what? I asked. She smiled softly. Alive. I blinked. He's always been alive. She shook her head. Not like this. Not before you and those children came. He used to eat alone, sleep alone, talk to no one unless it was business. You brought something different here. Her words stayed with me long after she walked away. That evening, when Callum came home, he looked exhausted but lighter, like a man who'd just closed a long, dark chapter. "It's done," he said quietly. "They're gone. Fired, charged, and the press cleared both our names." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "So, it's really over?" He nodded. "Finally." The kids were overjoyed when he told them. They celebrated with chocolate milk and too much cake. For the first time in weeks, laughter filled the mansion without any weight behind it. But even in that joy, I could feel something unspoken between us. Something waiting. Later that night, when the kids were asleep, I found him outside in the garden. He was sitting on the edge of the stone fountain, sleeves rolled up, tie undone, head tilted toward the stars. "You always find the quietest places," I said, walking over. He smiled faintly. "Noise makes me think too much." I sat beside him, our shoulders almost touching. "And silence doesn't?" He chuckled softly. "Silence makes me feel." I hesitated, then asked, "What do you feel right now?" He turned his head, eyes finding mine in the moonlight. "Relief," he said slowly. Then, after a pause, "And something I'm not sure I should." My chest tightened. "Callum." He looked away, as if gathering words carefully. "When you first came to work for me, I thought you were a distraction. Too soft, too warm for this world. I didn't want to notice you, but I did." I swallowed hard. "You don't have to say this." "Yes, I do," he said. "Because somewhere between the spilled coffee, the chaos, and your children calling me uncle, I forgot how to stay detached. You became my peace in the middle of everything I hated." Tears burned my eyes. "I never asked for that." "I know," he said softly. "That's what makes it real." The night was still. The only sound was the quiet ripple of the fountain and the sound of our hearts, both unsteady, both afraid. He reached for my hand, slow, careful. "You don't have to say anything now. I just needed you to know." I squeezed his hand back. "You shouldn't have to fight alone anymore, Callum." His eyes softened. "Neither should you." The next morning, the kids woke up early and decided they were going to play wedding. I walked into the living room to find them draping tissues like veils and making rings out of foil. "Who's getting married?" I asked, trying not to laugh. "Daddy and Uncle Callum," they shouted together. I froze. "What?" Eli grinned proudly. "He said he'll marry you if you say yes." "You didn't say yes yet." My face went hot. He was joking. "No, he wasn't," a calm voice said behind me. I turned. Callum stood in the doorway, coffee in hand, looking far too composed for someone being teased by 4 matchmakers. He walked closer, crouched to their level, and said gently, "All right, little ones. Maybe not a wedding just yet." Then, looking up at me, he added softly, "But maybe someday." The kids cheered and ran off to find cake, leaving me staring at him, speechless. When they were gone, I whispered, "You can't say things like that in front of them." "Why not?" he asked simply. "Because they'll believe you." He smiled faintly. "So will I." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "You're impossible." He took a step closer. "And you're the best mistake I've ever made." That made me laugh through my tears. "You don't mean that." He brushed a tear from my cheek with his thumb, his voice low. "I do." For a moment, the world stopped, just him and me, standing too close, hearts unguarded. Then one of the kids shouted from the kitchen, "Daddy, Uncle Callum." The cake fell. We both burst into laughter. He said quietly, "That's our life now, isn't it? Messy. Loud. Perfect." I nodded, smiling through my tears. "And worth it." Months passed. The investigation closed completely. I was reinstated at work, though Callum refused to let me return as his secretary. "You're not working for me anymore," he said. "You're working with me." He meant it too. Our partnership grew, both professionally and personally. The kids adored him more every day, and somewhere along the line, I stopped pretending not to. He'd come home late sometimes, exhausted, but the moment he saw them, or me, he'd smile, that rare, quiet smile that melted everything else away. And on quiet nights, when the kids were asleep, we'd sit together on the same balcony where everything started. No grand declarations. No dramatic scenes. Just peace. The kind I'd been searching for my whole life. One evening, Eli came to me with a drawing. It was of all 6 of us, me, the kids, and Callum, standing in front of a big house with hearts floating above it. Underneath, in uneven letters, it said, "Our family." I looked at it for a long time. When I showed it to Callum, he smiled softly. Looks accurate to me. Is that what we are? I asked quietly. He took my hand. It's what I want us to be. And when he leaned in, soft, certain, warm, it didn't feel like a confession. It felt like coming home. The next year, we took the kids to the park on a bright Sunday morning. Callum carried the picnic basket. I carried chaos. They ran ahead, laughing, chasing butterflies. At one point, I caught him watching me, the way he always did when he thought I wouldn't notice. What? I asked, smiling. He shook his head, eyes full of quiet love. Nothing. Just realizing I almost lost this. I reached for his hand. But you didn't. He squeezed it gently. No, I didn't. And when Eli shouted, Daddy, Uncle Callum, come play, we both went, laughing, running, living. Because for the first time in a long time, everything was exactly where it belonged.